Mac, not to sound creepy, not to be crass, but this just came to my head the other day. What is the first movie that you saw nudity in and can remember?
What were you doing that this came to mind, might I ask?
Don't you worry about me. Don't ask personal questions.
It's one of two movies. I'm pretty sure that it was Titanic and Kate Winslet's one titty, one nipple. I don't think we saw both in that. If it wasn't that, it was Friday the 13th, which you see a couple sets of breasts in that movie, which was probably too early for me to watch that movie. But what are you going to do? And if it wasn't those two things, I think I watched those two things before Woodstock 99, but then Woodstock 99 had tits galore. So one of those three things for sure was the first breasts I saw on a screen. Goo!
Yes.
What was the first titty you saw?
Okay, so the first one that I remember is Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Phoebe
Okay.
Cates.
Yeah, but why? So you watched that before you watched Titanic?
So I'm pretty sure that I saw that before Titanic.
Okay.
Which is funny because I saw that with my cousins, and I think my dad was in the room, and he didn't say anything about, her blowing the carrot or anything.
Sure.
And you mentioned Friday the 13th. I think my first might be from Halloween.
Oh, now I'm wondering if I saw Halloween before I saw Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I may have seen the edited Halloween before I saw the unedited Friday the 13th, but I think I saw, because Friday the 13th, I've said it a couple times here. When I was a kid, I wanted to watch Scream. So my father, sort of as a litmus test, said, listen, if you can handle Friday the 13th, you can watch Scream. So he showed me Friday the 13th, which had breasts, and I was good. I was all set, ready to rock.
When I was a kid, I wanted to smoke a cigar. My father said, no, you're going to have these cigarettes first.
One, goo, three, yeah! Goo. Jaws 3. Goo. King of Queens. Goo. Meryl Streep. Goo. Entertainment.
I'm Goo.
And I'm Mick.
And we are the Mac and Goo program. We bring you friendship, and today, Speed Force.
Yeah, Speed Force.
Speed Force.
Today, we're talking about The Flash. That's right.
Mhm.
The long-awaited, much-anticipated The Flash, which I think has been in development now for, 6 years, 5 years? Ever since Justice League?
Was Justice League? That was 2017? Yeah, so since
I'm
then.
pretty sure.
Yeah.
This is what we were pretty much promised after that. And I think what we ended up here with 5-6 years later is a far cry from what they probably set out to do 5-6 years ago when the universe was alive and well.
That's not a bad thing, though. That's not a bad thing.
I don't know if it's a good thing either, and we'll get into that too. But yeah, this is the ultimately. Now, we still don't really have clarity on this, but for lack of clarity's sake, let's call this the last movie in what was the DCEU, the universe that started with 2013's Man of Steel. So this is the 15th entry into that universe. 14 movies, one show, of course, Peacemaker. The one that we saw most recent to this in that universe would be Fury of the Gods, which we saw in March, which we both thought was okay, was fine.
Well, it should have been better.
Yeah.
Should have been better.
Yeah, and that's sort of the common theme with this whole entire universe. Goo, I would say this universe is mercifully coming to a close after 10 messy years. However, you could argue that it finishes on somewhat of a high note here.
Yeah, I think it finishes on definitely in its handful of best movies, within its handful of best movies.
Yeah, a Mount Rushmore DCEU movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think at worst you could argue it's fifth, but to me it's probably at least number 4. Goo, The Flash is a rated PG-13 action adventure, fantasy, and sci-fi with a runtime of 144 minutes. So it's on the longer side, but the pacing is such that you don't really feel like it's a 2.5-hour movie.
I did feel it a smidge at the end of the second act, heading into the third act. That's when it did get a bit long. And when it comes to being rated PG-13, they, much like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, do push the PG-13.
Yeah, they get away with a couple things in here. That's for sure.
Yes.
A couple cuss words in here. Goo, the ratings. This is very interesting, and we are recording before the full audience score is out.
I'm going to turn my headphones off because once again, I don't care.
On Roddy T's, this has 72% from the critics. That's out of 143 critic reviews. That would be 5th best behind Peacemaker, Wonder Woman, the Suicide Squad, and Birds of Prey. Currently, the audience score, Goo, now this is less than 100 audience reviews, so I don't even know why the number's up there, but it's at 95%, which I think is understandable. It probably will drop a little bit, but I think this is going to end up being around 90% audience score wise. On Metacritic, Goo, a 61 from 36 critic reviews. That's also 5th behind those same 4 properties, just ordered differently: Wonder Woman, The Suicide Squad, Shazam, and Peacemaker. So you can shit on Roddy T's all you want, but I think what we can take away from that, Goo, is definitively Tom Cruise, James Gunn, you're all big fat liars. This is nowhere even remotely close to the greatest comic book movie of all time. It's not even the best DC comic book movie of all time. It's not even the best DCEU comic book movie of all time.
So I still would like to see Tom Cruise. I would still like to see Tom Cruise's Letterboxd D to see what else he likes. But for James Gunn, the stuff in this movie does kind of mesh with the things that he likes or that he talks about.
Yeah, this movie's fun. It's funny.
Yeah.
And it does feel like, even though he probably had little to do with this movie because he came on so late in the process, it does feel like it has a little bit of a James Gunn fingerprint on it.
It does try and go outside the line on some jokes. And even in the opening act with that action sequence, it felt very Gunnian, if you know what I'm talking about. We'll talk about that.
That's a word.
And spoilers. But Gunn tweeted out earlier that he saw the first cut for this a year ago before he was the head of, the creative team. So, I mean, it's probably gone through a bunch of reshoots and, recuts, but I don't think he had that much to do with it.
No, I don't think he did either. But again, why it's sort of a for better or for worse from going back to 2017, 2018, because I feel like once you walked away and had a few hours a day to live and sit with this movie, you almost feel like it didn't do enough, right? And probably in part because they're saving some cool stuff or stuff that would have been in play here for what Gunn's going to do.
I would say that what hurt it for me would be the internet knew every secret.
Yeah, that's true. But also, like, the quote unquote secrets don't really have anything to do with the plot of the movie.
So what that would have done for me is maybe I would have had like a bigger blown away first feeling about the movie.
Yeah.
And then, you take a day or two and you think about it and you say, okay, that wasn't that great.
There's a moment.
It did take away a couple moments that if I didn't know about, I would have made a real mess in the theater.
There's a moment in this movie that if it was unbeknownst to us,
yes,
you would have passed out from the cum. No doubt about it. You would have completely
I would have been so full.
It would have been one of those moments where you finish, you just roll over and fall asleep, and I would have had to wake you up.
I would have been like that meme of like the dehydrated body.
Good. This movie is written by Christina Hodson and Joby Harold. Christina Hodson, you may know, she wrote Bumblebee and Birds of Prey, so they brought her back for a second DC property. Goose, she's also writing Fast X Part 2, which is very interesting, and is signed on to be the writer for Marge Bob's Pirates of the Caribbean movie. And additionally, she was the writer on the scrapped Batgirl movie. So what an up and down ride she's had so far.
You know what would be sick is if Fast X Part 2 was Fast X Part 2 and the whole movie was just in French out of nowhere.
Joby Harold, you may know from King Arthur, Legend of the Sword.
Talk to you later, Jobin.
He also wrote Army of the Dead and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Upcoming, he's got My Hero Academia. So coming into this movie, I thought that the writing was going to be the weak point of the movie, and I think I can confidently say it wasn't. The overarching story I have an issue with, but I think that was sort of out of their hands. The writing in this movie, the humor, and the character-to-character interactions I actually thought might have been the best part of the movie.
Yeah, and telling Barry's story telling, losing his mother, having to deal with that grief multiple times. I think what they do in this movie with that is great. And they also handle all of those other characters that they introduce into this movie extremely well.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, this movie was directed by Andy Muschietti. I don't know how you want to say it there, but he is the director from Mama, It, and It Chapter 2. Upcoming movies, he's got Welcome to Derry and Attack on Titan. I don't know if I had issues with the direction per se, but there are some things in this movie that don't look great, and some of it does have to do with direction.
I don't think that has to do with him. A lot of that is CGI.
Yeah, some of it I think is direction in the way he chooses to shoot a couple things, but you're right, a lot of it is the CGI.
A lot of the wonky look of this movie is the CGI and the breakneck speed of how, like, say, Superwoman moves around and uses her powers.
Is she Superwoman or Supergirl?
I think it's woman now.
I feel like it was Supergirl. I'm pretty sure it's Supergirl.
I don't know, man.
Doesn't really
You can
matter.
call her whatever you want.
Dude, the synopsis of this movie. Barry Allen uses his super speed to change the past, but his attempt to save his family creates a world without superheroes, forcing him to race for his life in order to save the future. Good enough.
That's kind of it, but
Good
it should
enough.
say metahumans.
Yeah, I guess so.
Because
Yeah.
Batman, he doesn't have
exists.
superpowers, but he's still a superhero.
Still a superhero, I agree. This movie stars Ezra Miller as Barry Allen, the Flash.
Boo. Not to Barry Allen. Barry Allen was finest, but Ezra Miller, boo.
Yeah, get this out of the way. Obviously, he seems like he's a pretty bad person. I actually think in this movie, it's the best we've seen him so far as the Flash. Goo, Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne / Batman. What do you have to say about him?
Vindicated. I was wrong. I was right. And I knew it all along. Oh, man. What a turn. What a turn.
Yeah, as a noted non-Keaton guy, I'm not really a fan of his Batman. I gotta say he was great in this. The best character in this movie. I really enjoyed the take on the character that we got.
I loved him back in 89 and 92, but I'm also willing to say now that over the past 30 years, ?
Yeah.
He's become a better actor as well.
Sure. Yep.
He has so much more range, and what he does with this character, he's all over the place.
Yeah, he does a great job. Elsewhere here in the movie, we get Ben Affleck as Bruce Wayne Batman, who is not in it maybe as much as I had wanted, but he does a good enough job. I don't think he was as strong as Keaton in this movie, but that's not to say I still don't like him more. Sasha Calle, I believe it's pronounced, as Supergirl. She was okay. I didn't think she was great. I didn't think she was bad. Michael Shannon as General Zod.
Hearing him talk about this movie, he's just like, I don't care.
Yeah, he doesn't care. We don't care.
He doesn't care. They even said, what was it like to return to being Zod? He's like, it wasn't that satisfying. I'll tell you that much.
Ron Livingston as Barry's father, Harry Allen. I actually thought he was great. Yeah,
I thought both of his parents great.
I really liked it. Yeah, and speaking of his mother, Mary Belle Verdue as Nora Allen. She was very good when she needed to be. Kiersey Clemens as Iris West, Barry's basically his love interest.
Yeah.
She's like kind of oddly spotted throughout this movie. They almost force her upon you.
Yeah,
but
funny in like the
enough.
1 or 2 scenes, or she lets Barry be funny in the 1 or 2 scenes that she's in.
Yeah. A real negative about this movie, and I don't want to make little kids feel bad. Ian Lowe as Little Barry. I thought it was fucking terrible.
Is that Little Barry or Lil Barry?
Whatever you want. Lil Rel Howery, Lil Barry. I thought he was really bad. I thought he was terrible.
Yeah. He wasn't great.
A couple more here before, and there's some spoiler stuff that we'll get into in spoilers. Gal Gadot obviously pops up here as Wonder Woman. It almost felt like she was in the very first cut of this movie, and then what we got at the end was a lot less of that.
It almost felt like she was on the set of Shazam: Fury of the Gods, and they said, "Hey, can you come over here for a second?
We need you for a scene," because she's literally in here for a scene.
Yeah.
And then I thought this character's only in the movie for maybe 5 minutes. Sean Rogers as Gary, roommate of Barry. I thought he was fucking unreal. Stole the show
with the leg.
Yeah,
he was awesome.
Absolutely killed me.
Yes.
Some prerequisites for this movie. Basically, how much did the prior DC stuff matter? Now, you would think 15 properties in, a movie billed as this massive sort of crossover event, maybe conclusion to these 15 properties. You'd think a lot of stuff would tie in here. Unfortunately, you don't get hardly any tie-ins. Essentially, all you really needed to see prior to this movie to understand the movie was Man of Steel and Justice League. I think that's about it.
Zack Snyder's Justice League.
No, because that's not canon.
No, but it's Speed Force.
Okay, fair, but it's not canon, which is weird.
I know, but it's Speed Force.
Yeah, but that's a good point. The Speed Force in that is used a little differently, though.
But it's still used, and he discovers it in that movie.
Sure, but I mean, it's like introduced sort of in this as well. I don't think you really need to, but it's watch both Justice Leagues, I guess. But point here is 15 movies in, and you're telling us basically 12 of the 15, 11 of the 15 don't matter.
That's fine.
Cops said they didn't matter.
Yeah.
And also, there's a little bit of a sour taste left here because it's a bit of an unsatisfying quote unquote conclusion. And I'm not so sure anything that happens in this movie means anything.
It's satisfying in learning a lesson, but not necessarily like it's not satisfying in wrapping up this world. Or, that's pretty much what you're saying, right?
It serves a purpose for one character and one character only.
Which is okay, though. It's
okay in a vacuum, but leading up to this with some flashpoint promise, it doesn't really satisfy those ends.
So, Mac, I think I have a couple issues with this movie. My biggest one is that you're in a couple scenes, and then out of nowhere, the CGI just looks like trash. How did this happen?
It makes no sense. I don't know how they've been working on it for so long. And especially actually to your point here, them using the Speed Force in the Snyder Cut. I don't know how it not only looks worse in this movie, but it not only does it look worse than from the Snyder Cut, but it just doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. Between that,
there are some action scenes that you get taken right out of. And also, there's a scene at the beginning of him running that looks like a PS3 cutscene.
I still can't get over the way this man runs. I don't know who told him to run like a speed skater.
Do you think that they were up against the wall because, X-Men already used the coolest possible running scene and Sonic did a pretty good job with it? So they're like, shit, we got to do something.
No, I think you could have just had him run like a normal person and it would have worked. Like if you watch Usain Bolt run, it is a completely different stance than what the Flash runs.
I'll tell you what I would have liked is if they recast Barry Allen with Usain Bolt.
Obviously, that's not a great example, but if the fastest human on the planet doesn't run remotely close to what they show us the Flash running like, it just doesn't jive. And I guess that you do explain it away like he's skating over the shit, so the speed skating sort of stuff. I don't know. It just doesn't look good. Although it does lead to one really funny
Ellie De La
scene
Cruz.
Yeah. Fastest sprint speed in the league right now.
Crazy. Straightforward speed, babe. And then also, like I said earlier with Gunn and how this movie, kind of goes a little outside the bun with their jokes and maybe with some of their action. They take some bigger swings here and get a bit weird on what Barry has to do. Like at the beginning of the movie, this isn't really a spoiler, but he needs to save babies falling out of a hospital window.
Yeah,
doesn't necessarily look great.
It looks not good.
It looks not good. But the idea of it,
yeah,
I appreciate.
It's fun. So that's the interesting thing about this movie. Those two ideas are like bouncing back and forth in your head the whole movie. A lot of it doesn't look great, but what they're doing is fun and funny.
Like, I'm like, that's unique. Right. We haven't seen this yet.
Yeah, it's a weird battle going on in your head the whole movie because you're like, oh, this is fun, this is cool, but it doesn't look that great. It looks like it's from 2012.
It doesn't look good. It doesn't. And we're not saying they did a bad job. Whoever greenlit it did a bad job. Whoever said, all right, let's put this to print, whatever, it's cool.
And us being only, a few days, a week removed from talking about Across the Spider-Verse and how amazing of a job that those animators, and there's a 14-year-old kid that animated the Lego scene in that. And you can't tell me this $220 million movie can't have good CGI. It just doesn't. It has been a DC problem the whole time.
I will say this though, is that they said, okay, yeah, we had a budget of 220 million, but we had to give 150 of that to Michael Keaton. I would have said money well spent.
Yes, you would have said that.
I said that ROI on that payment right there is pretty goddamn good. All right, Mac, let's get into the gauntlet before we give our hot dog scores and start diving into some spoilers, because it's really tough to talk about this movie without spoiling anything. Fun factor, and I think there is tons of fun. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of the main character, he still had some pretty good humor there. And then everything with Batman. Batmans, if you will.
Batmans.
Great. Thumbs up.
Yeah, consistent fun throughout. And that's really what, if you look at the best of DC so far, be it Peacemaker, the Suicide Squad, or Shazam, with honorable mention to Wonder Woman, what separates those from the pack is the fun those properties have and the fun you have throughout the runtime. And so that's why, even though this isn't in the top tier, I don't think it's in the conversation with those, because thematically it feels more like those.
Satisfactor. How satisfied were you by this movie? And by the end of it, satisfied in a way that I wasn't expecting, because I wasn't expecting them to wrap it up as they did.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, because I think there's several satisfying moments in this movie for a lot of moviegoers. Being that some were ruined by Reddit, for me, I didn't quite get that satisfaction. Additionally, I'm a little dissatisfied with the lack of like multiverse and crossover stuff we got.
Borometer. How boring was this movie? And I don't think it was super boring. I already talked, it's a little tick, end of the second, beginning of the third act. And then also there is a storyline in here that wasn't necessarily boring, but I thought it was wonderfully stupid.
I wouldn't say boring either, but I do think the big climax of the movie is pretty predictable. You catch on maybe 10 or 15 minutes beforehand. Yeah. And so maybe because it's so predictable, it feels a bit boring in that moment. But no, in general, not boring. The barometer is low.
Aquator, it is better than 2017's Aquaman.
Sure is.
Halloween. Will this movie get worse over time for you or get better? I don't know. Will it wane? And I don't think it will a ton for me. I think usually with movies like this, the big Easter egg movies, the big cameo movies, after that initial pop, you do get that wane. But going into it, you knew what all of these were going to be. And I've kind of sat on it a couple days, and I'm still around the same.
Yeah, I agree with you more or less in that it didn't exceed my expectations. It didn't really fail to meet them either. It sort of like landed the plane roughly as I expected. But because it's not going to mean much going forward, at least I don't think, there's not going to be much reason to come back to this either. So probably naturally it will wane.
Pants Tent City. Excite Bike Mania. What got you going in this movie? And it's very simple. One word: Keaton. Keaton, baby. There is one action scene in this movie where it is stuff that... Now, we've seen some really good action Batman scenes over the past decade with Affleck, with Pattinson. They gave us one with Keaton that I just loved. I loved everything about it.
Yeah, that Keaton scene, I don't think... first of all, it's a true pants tent for anyone.
Also, it's definitely not Keaton in the Batsuit, but sure, Batman doing those things is fucking dope.
It's a true pants tent for anyone that loves Batman just like kicking the shit out of like 15 villains in a room. It really is satisfying. I don't know if it's quite Batfleck level from BVS.
No.
And there's also a couple cool Pattinson scenes in
everything
the Batman.
In fucking Battinson.
But
Pattinson.
It is in the conversation for best Batman scenes we've seen. So that's honestly impressive, considering that Keaton Batman, we had never had a scene like that before.
Max Credit Union. Who are we giving credit to? And I will give it to my Italian brethren. He's Italian, right? Muschietti?
Yeah, it's got to be.
Muschietti.
Muschietti.
I would say for juggling this whole movie with all the topics and for having it, it's not too overwhelming, which is pretty good. I think that's done pretty well.
Yeah, it's weird you're giving the director credit. I'm giving the writers credit here, but we don't really love the movie. I got to give the writers credit, but
I can't give Keaton every award.
This is in part because I had such low expectations for the writing coming into this movie, and I thought it blew my expectations out of the water. This movie is legit funny, legit hysterical, and I was worried about that going in.
For those of you tardy to the Mac and Goo party, we rate everything on a 40 hot dog rating system. Mac, I shall go first. And I think the most important thing for everybody going into this, and this will really influence how much you like the movie, is how much do you like Ezra Miller's Flash? Not Ezra Miller in general as a person, but his depiction of the character, his depiction of Barry Allen, because not only is there one of him, but there is double trouble. There is a parent trap. There is two of them, and the younger one is turned up to 11. He's way, way more annoying.
That's a good way of putting it, yeah.
So if you love that character, I think this is more for you than for me. I'm also willing to ignore some wonky CGI, but there was a lot. Like around each turn, there was more weird CGI that I didn't love. But the movie's pretty fun. And Michael Keaton is just fucking amazing in this. He saves the movie for me, not necessarily from being a terrible movie, but it goes from being a good movie, one that you might not remember, to being pretty memorable because of him. I love him. The charisma, the humor, the action scenes, like I said earlier, not necessarily with him, but with that character. And he needs to be brought back for the Batman Beyond movie that was promised to us. Not really promised, but they had greenlit it and then they took it away. But make this movie with him as the surly old Bruce Wayne, because we see it here. He can pull that off, and it'll be fucking amazing. Affleck, also good as Batman. Everything Batman, thumbs up. There are some really great cameos, really good Easter eggs, ones that I really wish I didn't know about because they would have fucking blew my pants off. That's not even a saying, and it would have happened. They would have flew up to the ceiling.
My pants would have flown.
So I liked a bunch of stuff in this. I loved some stuff in this, but the movie didn't really blow me away. I got it at 33 hot dogs.
Now, before I get into my dog score, do you think your score is affected by the fact that you were sort of expecting like a 40 dog movie, let's say 2 months ago? You know, once Gunn came out and said that, once Cruise came out and said that, you're expecting like 38, 39, 40 hot dogs.
Sure. But also, if you gave me like 10 more minutes of Keaton, 40. If you give me more money, 35.
I think coming into this movie, I didn't expect it to be any better than like a 36, 37 dog movie. So I think that helps my score, and maybe that's why your score isn't as high as some people might think. All right, Goo. Don't get me wrong. I do like the story and the very human message this film has, especially to round out our hero, to round out Barry. It really works for Barry Allen, the Flash. However, it is hard not feeling disappointed with the lack of multiverses or crossovers after once again being promised a bill of goods that we simply did not get. This is getting pretty tiring for these big multiverse events where we really just operate in two. In fact, it suffers from the exact same problems, not all of them, but many of the same problems that Multiverse of Madness had, where going in, you're expecting, let's say, 5 crossovers or whatever, and you really just get one big one. And so it's a little bit of a letdown. So ultimately, this movie feels more like a solo movie, oddly enough, than it does some massive crossover, despite the inclusion of some certain characters. So I suppose calling it The Flash works because it really is just a movie about the Flash, how the Flash grows, how the Flash gets rounded out, even though it's quote unquote a multiverse movie. One of those characters, though, Goo, as we've talked about extensively here so far, is Michael Keaton's Batman, and he's flat out awesome. He's the best character in this movie. And he also provides what I think is the best scene in this movie, giving us a Keaton scene we had never seen before in the bat suit. Also, to your point, I think the next best scene might be the opening with Batfleck and that whole chase thing. That was pretty sweet as well. And to expand on what you were talking about with the CGI, I think that's going to be a really common criticism of this film. maybe the most common criticism is this lackluster CGI. And again, all this talk about this movie being one of the greatest comic book movies ever and having a budget north of 220 million, there's no excuse for the loads of bad CGI in this. Just none. There's no reason for it. And several scenes in here that are supposed to be great or maybe emotionally great feel a little less because the CGI is not good. So it actually does take away from moments in this movie. And my final real criticism of this movie, and it's probably the biggest, it lacks a good villain. It's almost devoid of a real villain. Because if you want to, and you know, it does work because of the Barry stuff going on. But if you want to compare this to the GOATs or talk about this being one of the greatest comic book movies of all time, it needs that. It needs a great villain, a villain that we hate or a villain that we can understand their motivations, and it doesn't have it. And then once you really figure out what's going on in this movie, it loses a little bit of steam as well. And I do think probably they pulled back on some of the possibilities and potential of the story because they're planning on using some stuff in the future, or Gunn's planning on using some stuff in the future. And I get that, but it does ultimately hurt this movie. All that being said, Gil, I laughed out loud on a shit ton of times in this movie. This movie is hysterical. There's loads of fun. I do wonder, because it does get like silly and goofy, especially with the young Barry, if there's some Love and Thunder fan reaction to this, that it's almost a little too goofy or too silly. I don't have those thoughts. I thought it was really good, just as I thought Love and Thunder is really good. So Goo, I have this at 34 hot dogs. It's the third best DCEU movie to me, behind the Suicide Squad and Shazam.
Yeah.
I forget what I gave Peacemaker, but I think it's right around that as well. And those are just ahead of Wonder Woman. And for me, probably the fourth best movie of 2023, just narrowly edging out Quantumania, but those might flip-flop as the year goes on. They're different. Quantumania's got a great villain, maybe missed on some other parts, and The Flash has some great moments throughout, but lacks a great villain. So it's interesting to think here that I might like this movie a little bit more than you, considering how we were going into it.
So I have this third in the DCEU, but right around where Wonder Woman is. I still have The Suicide Squad at number 1, Shazam at number 2. And then on the year so far, I have it around 5 or 6, right around where Blackberry is. Maybe a little bit lower than Blackberry.
And for comic book movies, below Across the Spider-Verse, below
and Guardians. Yes.
Guardians, and you have it above Quantumania as well?
I think I have it not well above Quantumania. I have Quantumania around like 31, so it's 2 or 3 dogs higher.
All right, yeah. So I liked Quantumania a bit more than you then. Okay.
But Quantumania, hear me out, didn't have Michael Keaton.
Spoilers! Goo!
Yes.
Full disclosure. We've mentioned this a couple times. We mentioned this in teasing this movie a bit. Had we not known some of these cameos, I have no doubt in my mind that both of our dogs.
So once again, we're spoiling. We're going to start talking about the cameos right now. So turn your radio
Which
up,
we talked about on a news dump like
knob.
6 weeks ago. So if you heard that, you know these. But if we hadn't known any of that, I think both of our dog scores are at least probably at least the dog, if not too higher.
About this next one, I still had a smile on my face as it was happening.
Yeah.
But if I didn't know about it, because I'd have been like, they're gonna do it. They're gonna do it. They're gonna do it. They had Nicolas Cage as Superman fighting a giant spider.
Long-haired Nicolas Cage in the suit that we saw from the infamous photo, fighting a gigantic spider in some other dimension, some other world.
He was wearing the fruit roll-up Superman outfit with the deep V in the mullet.
Yeah, it was very, very fun.
Oh my God.
Very satisfying. Again, it would have been so much more satisfying had we not known that. This also calls into question, and this is the same thing with all of these except for one at the end. Did you like how they just like peek into these universes and the characters just like oddly turn and then nothing else happens with them?
I would have liked Barry running through it, maybe interacting with them for a second.
I agree. Yes. I agree. Because it was a little bit of like a, I'm not going to say a throwaway, but it was
especially with like the Christopher Reeve one and the Adam West one was really weird. Just a bunch of Wests and like a kaleidoscope type of thing. Yeah. But I don't know if I necessarily needed it in the Cage one because he was fighting the spider.
Yeah, no, we got a bit of an extended one with Cage. I just I agree with you that like I wanted some interaction between this universe and some of those universes. Instead, they just sort of show them in the background, which is a little frustrating.
Do we believe that this is going to win the Pants Tent City moment of the year?
No, because I don't. As cool as it is in the theater, I didn't get the pop that it needed. You know what I mean?
I did. I still got it, even though I knew it was coming. I was still like, wow, they actually did this.
Yeah, they actually did it and showed the spider.
Don't get me wrong; it would have been cool if, like, say in the actual fight that they had with Zod, a giant mechanical spider was out there, and then Nick Cage just showed up and started fighting it. That would have been cooler. But we still got to see this.
Well, that's where I get a little frustrated with, like this movie could have done a lot knowing that it's a conclusion or knowing that what happens in here really doesn't affect stuff going forward. So I did want them to get like crazier than they did multiverse wise. Bring in a fucking giant spider. Bring in Nick Cage.
Oh my God.
Like,
you know what would have been sick? Okay, so what if during that giant fight, like Cage shows up, Reeves shows up, Adam West shows up, and then Keaton looks right at the camera and goes, "That's nuts."
I thought we were going to get something like that, some major battle or fight like that, and we just didn't. We do get a somewhat cool, like, Flash and the Flashes and Batman against all of Zod's, like, you know, cronies, but
yeah,
I don't know. It lacked the big crossover moment, despite it having the awesome Batman moments.
But once again, we did get Cage.
We also got Goo. Christopher Reeves in sort of just a quick glimpse. I forget who the Supergirl is in that universe. We get her as well.
Yeah, so she had her own movie, I think, in '86.
Yes, that's right. The blonde,
known as one of the worst movies of all time.
Yeah, it's not good. We also see George Reeves briefly here too, the original Superman. I'm pretty sure. Did we see Brandon Routh as well? We might.
Oh, is he serving popcorn at the theater?
We also get a glimpse.
That's a joke, guys. Brandon Routh's a good guy.
We get a glimpse of Adam West as Batman, and then Goo at the very end of this movie, which was also incredibly satisfying.
Yeah,
and I couldn't tell you why. I think because we both want redemption for this actor. George Clooney shows back up as Bruce Wayne Batman in Barry's quote-unquote normal universe where he's supposed to be, which is a great tie-in to how Barry solves his dad's problem, right?
Yep. And of course, the line of, "Who the fuck are you?" is a great toss in there. I would have loved it, and this doesn't take away from the scene, but you know how at the beginning of the movie, Batman or Alfred calls Barry into a battle? If that happened again, where Batman called Barry into a battle and he goes into the battle and it's George Clooney wearing the nipple bat suit.
Yeah, I need to see if the nipples are there.
I think that would have done it more for me.
Yeah, that would have been cool. I do like, though, you know, when Barry ultimately learns from the big moment in this film, spoiler here, obviously we're in the spoilers. The villain in this is just young Barry who's been stuck in time forever, which I didn't love, but I sort of get for Barry's sake.
And we also knew going in, we even said, who's the bad guy, Barry? Probably Barry.
I love that the little fix way back when, so that his father looks up, still has a little bit of a change in his universe. So instead of Batfleck now, we have George Clooney as the Batman in Ezra Miller's universe, in Barry Allen's universe, which I really liked. I like that little touch on it.
Yeah. No Halle Berry, though.
Yeah, no Halle Berry. So what does that mean?
Is she going to be Storm again?
Is she coming back as Storm? I don't know. Now I'm so fucking confused.
Also, I mean, you didn't need to do much with this, but you showed a bunch of different worlds. Maybe you have a world with some of the animated characters, because DC has done really well with their animated stuff. How about a little nod to Kevin Conroy, Mark Hamill, any of the Superman stuff from the 90s?
Now this is a double spoiler warning. If you haven't seen Across the Spider-Verse, skip ahead 1 minute. How can Across the Spider-Verse give me the live action Donald Glover Prowler, and then this movie not give us those animated characters?
Even just a little wink, just saying, like, so Kevin Conroy within the past year has died.
Oh, come on. He's dead.
Yes, he's dead. So
come on, don't make fun of him.
That's what I was trying to do. But just give him, like, hey, you are maybe the best Batman of all time. Let's put you on the big screen for a second.
Yeah, right. A little homage, right? It would
Yeah.
have made a lot of sense, I felt like.
Although there was a great point in this movie when they're in the Batcave and he has a bag of laughing teeth.
Yes.
That was good.
Pretty good. I liked
Yeah.
that. So, Goo, ultimately, my takeaways from these cameos, and I think yours as well, the Cage and Clooney stuff would have been fucking incredible. It's awesome anyways. It would have been fucking incredible had we not known about it.
And also, they would have been better if they played into the story a little bit more.
Yeah, that's true as well. Yep.
Also, there's a bank robbery at the beginning, or a hospital. I don't know what they're doing. There's some kind of a hijink.
They steal a virus. From,
so they steal a virus at the beginning, and it's just goons. Yeah. I would have loved it, and maybe they should have either done Jared Leto's Joker or Harley Quinn as the person that's running this theft. Something like that. Just toss in another little bit of something for the people to have.
Yeah. Again, since, what happens in this movie really doesn't mean stuff going forward, get fun there. Give us a cool character in that moment.
Do Captain Boomerang for all I care.
Yeah. Anyone besides a faceless bank robber or heist guy. Another time travel bit I loved in this was how
was good. Yeah. This was
good. In the young Barry or the 18-year-old Barry's universe, Eric Stoltz is Back to the Future actually came out. So Michael J. Fox never played Marty McFly. And so that ripple effect was Michael J. Fox ended up playing a character in another movie.
Footloose.
In Footloose. And then Kevin Bacon was in Top Gun. And then Tom Cruise was in something as well. It was a very funny ripple effect. And I really enjoyed that as well. Let's get back to the plot of the movie here. And now that we're talking about spoilers, essentially, Barry is now able to enter the Speed Force at will. And now that he realizes he can actually time travel. So he convinces himself he can go back and save his mother from dying and save his father from being wrongfully accused of killing her. That's the rough plot of this movie. And obviously things go awry. He gets stuck in the 18-year-old Barry's universe because 18-year-old Barry pushes him out of the Speed Force, which I did love. I don't even really know if they paid that off all that well.
Line.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I got lost on my page there. And this is one of the few, or maybe the only universe where his mother's actually still alive, which motivates our Barry to actually stay there. And I just don't know, like, maybe because we just saw it in Across the Spider-Verse, it felt a little stale, Barry going back and trying to change these like canon level events, right? These events that were meant to be and that can't be changed.
Well, we've seen that
going back.
We've seen a bunch of time traveling movies too.
Yeah, and that's part of it. So that felt a little stale. I don't really love that 18-year-old Barry ends up being the villain. He's just trapped in time trying to change shit. And again, that works for Barry's growth as a character and for Barry to become the best Flash he can be. I just don't think it works for the movie all that well, if that makes sense.
But I will say that final scene with his mother in the convenience store in the supermarket hits.
That was nice.
Great.
That was nice. It was a good emotional scene. But I keep thinking about this now in the, what are we, 5 days removed from this movie? I keep thinking about the promise for Flashpoint level stuff in this movie and us not getting anything remotely like that. And the Flashpoint level stuff reboots the universe, right? This doesn't do that. It doesn't even remotely come close to it. And we don't really know how this character is going to play in James Gunn stuff going forward, or if it is at all. So it's also kind of confusing. I don't know. It just feels almost inconsequential. I'm not going to use the word useless, but nothing really meaningful going forward from it. And it's not even really a conclusion for the last 10 years in the DCEU. So we're stuck in a weird medium there.
Okay, so the thing that I hate the most in this movie, like I think bar none, outside of the CGI really wasn't great. But one of the things in this movie is that Barry goes out of his way to make sure that his younger self gets his powers. But in the process, he gets struck by lightning again and he loses his powers. So we then have a half an hour of one Barry being powerless, but then he gets his powers back by being struck by lightning and being hit with all the acid again, as if he's Fred Flintstone who gets amnesia from being hit out with a frying pan. and then gets his memory back from being hit in the head with the frying pan again.
Yeah, that was really flimsy. I agree. That was like we're really stretching it here. And I want to be clear for the listeners at home too. It's hard for us to. We are kind of hyper criticizing the movie here, in part because it was promised to be the best movie of all time. But I want you guys to understand as well, because this movie was so funny and had so much fun. It's really bringing it up. We're forgiving a lot of what's wrong in this movie
like
because
this
we had
half
so
an
much
hour.
fun.
And like, there's a bunch of fun stuff in this half hour, a lot of stuff that has to do with Batman. But like, we have a 10 to 15 minute scene of him getting his powers back that you could have just cut from the movie.
Yeah, it just wasn't. And Supergirl delivers the line that Barry delivers to her when they save her from Russia. Like, that didn't really hit at all either. So, Goo, did you care for the explanation that Superman's like fighting a volcano?
I thought you were going to say, do you care for Michael Keaton's outfit of like his mechanics with the shawl with like the tied off kerchief?
Oh, when we first see him?
He's wearing a kerchief whenever he's Bruce Wayne.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. But speaking of, when we first get reintroduced to Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne, he's old looking. He's got hair, beard, and the scene in the kitchen where he kicks ass was awesome too. But it was fun to see him turn from like, I don't want to do any of this to wait. I kind of want to have fun again as Batman. Jump back into this stuff.
Also, I love the fact that Barry has been, working with all this time traveling stuff. He's been talking with the other Bruce Wayne about it, everything else. And within a second, Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne explains it to him like, I'm smarter than you. I know more about everything than you.
Gil, I wonder, who do you think is in play going forward in James Gunn's universe or universes from this movie, if anyone?
So I do think this is not the last time that we see Michael Keaton's Batman.
That is interesting that you think that.
I don't think he's ever going to get his own solo movie again.
Mm-hmm.
But I really think Beyond has to be on the table. Because Terry McGinnis is also such a fucking great character.
Yeah, it's true. I do think it's going to be hard for them to ignore how popular and how much he's going to be liked again as Batman coming out of this. I will agree with that.
But what will be tough for them is that I'm not sure what his quote is, but I'm pretty sure it's like 25 or 30 million bucks. So it's a lot of fucking money.
But don't you also feel like because of the way he goes out in this movie, spoiler alert, he dies. It was his swan song, right?
So he does die. He does die twice. Live, die, repeat. But also, that doesn't necessarily mean anything because it could just be another time cycle.
Hear me out. I think it does mean something because it seems like what they're setting up is Clooney to get that redemption that you're speaking for. And Keaton doesn't really need the redemption either, right?
Never.
But it almost feels like they're setting Clooney up to show up again.
Because think of the fact that I want to say Keaton said he turned down like $15 million to do Batman Forever. Think of how much they had to offer him to do this.
Yeah, but I also feel like the time that has passed, maybe he felt like it was time to come back to this character. But again, he dies and they replace Batfleck with Clooney. So it feels like if we're going to get anyone, it's going to be Clooney.
I don't think so. I think if we get anyone, I think this was a nice little nod for Clooney at the end. But I don't think they have any plans of Clooney ever being Batman or Bruce Wayne ever again. I think that Keaton, because of the popularity in this movie once again, and I think coming out of it, critics-wise, fan-wise, one thing that everyone will agree on is that Michael Keaton rules.
Yes. Lowest common denominator here is that Michael Keaton rules. Maybe you're right, too, because they probably would have showed Clooney in a suit at the end if he was going to be Batman.
And then once again,
going forward.
It can be an Elseworld movie, so none of this even matters. The cops.
I know, but I don't like that. But now I'm thinking about this, like, because we criticized Multiverse of Madness a lot, and rightfully so, for having a lot of the same issues. But this movie is so much more fun than that movie. You know what I mean? Like,
no, it absolutely is.
In spite of this movie's issues, I still had a blast watching it.
Agreed. So I think that they should have saved the "you want to get nuts, let's get nuts." They didn't need that for the trailer. And if they had saved that for the movie, I think the theaters would have all erupted.
Yep. That combined with the Cage and Clooney stuff would have been 3 great pops had we not known about it. We get one post-credit in this movie. Mm-hmm. And it's Jason Momoa.
I think it sucks.
Jason Momoa as Aquaman drinking with Barry Allen's Flash outside of his apartment at that local bar room, and it is bad. It's useless. It's unnecessary. Yeah. I don't get why this was here.
So I just mentioned it like a second ago. I just mentioned a second ago the "you want to get nuts" line. There was one line in this movie that hit for me, and I'm sure anyone that loves Batman '89, and it's when Michael Keaton's Batman asked the two Flash and Supergirl, she's unconscious at the time, "How much do you weigh?" And that's such a great callback to when he asked Kim Basinger that in '89.
Yeah, for the explosive there. Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong. In the post-credit at the end of season 1 of Peacemaker, we see Flash in Aquaman, right? Is that correct?
Yes. Well, no, we see all of them, right?
No, we see silhouettes of a couple others, but we only actually see Ezra and Momoa, I think. So I wonder if Ezra, well, actually, I don't know if he's ever going to come back, but it's kind of hard now that you've built this whole Flashpoint paradox around him. But it feels like Momoa is going to come back, right? And we still have his movie coming out.
We still have Aquaman too.
Yeah, so I guess, I don't know. Is that why they stuck him in the post-credit? He's actually going to be there going forward?
Is if in Aquaman 2, Momoa looks at the camera and goes, "I was Lobo all along."
That would be sick.
That would be sick. And then, someone with blonde hair and like an orange shirt pops up, played by Vinny Chase, and he's like, "I'm the real Aquaman." This big head.
Yeah. He nailed that.
He had a huge head, didn't he?
He did. Large head, large dome.
So I also would have liked, Keaton in this movie, his Batman, he's pretty strong. Stronger than, your normal 70-year-old man, unless your 70-year-old man is Michael Myers from the Halloween franchise. I would have liked maybe a small mention that maybe Keaton's suit gave him some enhanced strength.
Yeah, and that all just plays into why I love the Affleck character so much, because they explain stuff easily. You're not asking questions about why stuff happens. And of course, I'm talking about the voice modulator most notably. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. They should have probably talked about how this 70-year-old man is whooping ass like that.
Like just killing it. He is killing it. Also, I do like the at the end of the movie, the way that he fixes the situation for his father is he just puts the cans of tomatoes on the top shelf.
Yeah, it's a nice subtle fix. And that's why I think I like the Clooney thing so much, because it's a nice subtle change on the other end. It's a good 1-for-1 there. I really enjoyed both of those things.
So once again, I don't know, was I too negative? I don't think I was too negative. Most of my negativity has to do with the Flash and with CGI.
Yeah, and also you have to consider what was being touted for this movie. You can't spend 2 months paying people to come out and say this is one of the greatest superhero movies of all time, and not have us going in expecting something on that level. So when it's not on that level, we're naturally inclined to be a little more, criticizing of it. So it just makes sense.
I'll be positive to wrap this up.
Okay.
Michael Keaton, Ben Affleck, Nicolas Cage,
and George Clooney.
George Clooney is like a half. So 3.5 great things right there.
What's the Mount Rushmore of things in the movie? You named 3. What's the 4th?
It'd be those 4 probably.
Okay. All right. So three Batman and Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas Cage with this fruit roll up, this super tight outfit, looking off and smirking. I want to watch. And that's what, like 45 seconds?
If that. It is brief.
I want to watch it on a loop.
I also felt like, and this is a big part of that scene, all those scenes where the worlds are all colliding, which didn't look great anyways.
No.
But they were all CGI faces. Even that Cage was a CGI. You couldn't have gotten Cage to come in and stand in. Come on.
Yeah. And he goes, "I'm Nick fucking Cage." Woo!
Oh, God.
So 33 hot dogs.
Yeah, 34. I feel okay with that.
Let's get into MacSack.
And MacSack could be anything. It could be a boat. Mac, let me ask you this question. Without thinking too hard, please rank the live action Batmans / Bruce Waynes. So toss them all into one bin. So let's leave Kevin Conroy out of this. And let's just go with Adam West, Michael Keaton, not Kevin Conroy, Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, George Clooney, Christian Bale, Ben Affleck, Robert Pattinson.
This, you know, I think I'm going to be accused of recency bias here with my answer, but hear me out. I have a little bit of reasoning, a little bit of backing to what I'm going to say. I think still very clearly Ben Affleck, Batfleck, is the best version of Batman we've seen. He's this big brawling Batman, and we don't get that with any of the other ones. That's my preferred version of the character. And if you're going to believe, at least for me, and I made this argument before, if you're going to believe someone as Batman, you really need to believe that he can kick like 99% of the world's ass. And a lot of the other Batman, that's not a believable aspect. So he's the only version of that. Plus, I think he's the best Bruce Wayne. I think he's the most believable. Now, Bale's close. I'll fully admit Bale is close. He's the most believable as like that billionaire, the Tony Stark, you know, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist. But Bale is close there. And again, the simple and subtle fixes and explanations they have for things, like the voice modulator, that bumps his character up too. I still don't understand why that's not the standard for the character now. And that bumps up Batfleck and bumps down Bale, because the Bale stuff has been memed so many times over at this point that it's hard to really like him talking when he's Batman. I think second, because I don't think there's much bad to say at this moment about him, is Pattinson, Robert Pattinson. You know, this version of the character is not as big and brooding as Batfleck's, but we do get the methodical detective type more so than any of the other characters, which I think differentiates him as well. So that's pretty satisfying. And of course, he does kick a lot of ass in that movie. I think he lacks in the Bruce Wayne aspects, though. And so that's what I keep coming back to. I think Batfleck is great as both. I'm not sure any of the other ones are. And so we'll get to Bale. I don't think he's great as Batman because of that voice. It's just it's funny. It shouldn't be, and it is. And then Keaton, I don't think he's a great Bruce Wayne. Like, I have a hard time believing that ugly fuck is, you know, this playboy philanthropist. And maybe that's just a me thing. And so be it. And then after that, West, Kilmer, Clooney, rank them how you want. West is like kind of operating in his own world there. I actually don't mind Kilmer, but I can't pretend that I love him. Clooney, I think, was definitely the worst.
So number one, Keaton's Batman got Vicky Vale, Kim Basinger, and Michelle Pfeiffer, Catwoman. So you can go ahead and suck it.
That's why it's not believable.
You can suck it. Also, I like how I said without thinking too hard, and you wrote a goddamn thesis. So at number 7, I would put George Clooney. I think that he is the worst at both, all the way down the line. At number 6 would be Val Kilmer. I liked his Bruce Wayne enough. I don't think his Batman was great. I would then put Adam West, who took a very goofy role pretty seriously, and I do like that. I would then go with Ben Affleck as 4, and this is not his fault because I think he's great at both Bruce Wayne and Batman, but never got a standalone, and I don't really like or love any of his movies, so that has to hurt him a little bit. Christian Bale, I think, is the best Bruce Wayne, but his Batman leaves a little bit to be desired. Robert Pattinson, I think, is the best Batman, but his Bruce Wayne still needs more time. TBD on that. And then I think Michael Keaton is just adding this onto the pile is just fun. He's a big roundabout fun Batman.
He might, yeah. I like you're never not going to have Keaton at 1, so I can't even really have this conversation with you. If you want to, just for the listeners, if we
the Batman Award goes to Michael Keaton.
If we were to do this the way we do top 10s, Pattinson would actually come out number 1 between us because we both had him at number 2. So like maybe he's the best one.
He kicks a bunch of ass.
Yeah, there you go.
He's great as Batman. He's
only going to get better. That's a rocket ship right there.
Also, too, he's the only one that actually solves crimes and solves mysteries.
Yes, yeah.
He's the only detective. Although, so I do like that. I want to say starting with Bale, because Bale did, you know, some forensics and stuff and did a bit of that. But Affleck, the crimes weren't great. Like, he wasn't doing a great job with like the detective work, but he was at least doing some.
Yes.
And then Pattinson took it to a whole new level, and Keaton was doing a bunch in this one too.
Yeah, I think if we get 2 more Pattinson movies, I think there's a chance we both have him number 1.
Agreed. All right, Mac, where can the people find us?
You can find us on Twitter and on Instagram at Mac and Goo Podcast, and every other platform. We are Mac & Goo. It's Mac Shift 7 Goo. That includes Facebook, Stitcher, TuneIn, Castbox, Spreaker, Google Play, iHeartRadio. We're on Spotify. More importantly, we're on Apple Podcasts. Get on there, rate, review, subscribe. 5 stars. If you do that, we'll get you a free Mac and Goo t-shirt from the folks over at Watertown Sportswear, 34 Mount Auburn Street in Watertown, watertownsportswear.com. Expert screen printing and embroidery.
tpublic.com. Check out next week. We'll be doing, and I think you should leave countdown of the sketches. So that's big.
Yeah. We also get trivia next week.
Oh, shit. We do.
Yeah.
Oh, trivia next week
Big
for
week.
90s tunes.
Ooh.
90s cartoons.
So
WB, Fox Kids, Disney Afternoons, Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon. There's a bunch in there, baby.
Yeah, baby.
Yes. Also, earlier I mentioned the movie Blackberry that is starring Glenn Howerton and Jay Baruchel. I would recommend it. Check it out wherever you can find it.
And you're a noted Jay Baruchel hater.
I'm not a big fan of Jay Baruchel, but I'm a big fan of Glenn Howerton, and he's great in this.
What's the Taron Egerton movie? I thought he was in that movie.
Tetris.
Oh, that's the Tetris
Which I
one.
still
That's
need
right.
to say.
That's right.
But go and check those out. So,
Yeah.
I guess that's it for us.
Yeah, see you on the other side.
Tuesdays are Goose Days. I abuse kangaroos.
Bye.
Now it's time for girls jumping on trampolines.
Please flip the cassette over to side B to continue the adventure.